Hi there. As you can see, my lips and voice are not in sync. That is because the AirBrush noob also forgot to turn on the sound input on his camera, and so you're left looking at a disconnected voice from a video. And from what we can judge from this footage is that this guy really gets a kick out of talking to the camera for some strange reason. He likes to think that he's pretty clever, but he's not. And as he shakes his paintbrush at the screen, he does so with kind of this feeling that maybe he knows what he's talking about, when really he doesn't. And so he'll show you things like bringing a little plastic canopy up to the glass, up to the camera, to kind of give you an illustration of what he plans to do in this video, that where he tries to salvage what he had previously done and the mistakes that he had made in the previous video. And as you can see, as he continues to look directly into the camera and continues to hold that paintbrush in his hand in some sort of authoritative type position, and he moves his hands around a lot. Oh, he even shows us bottles of masking fluid and other various products, trying to describe what he's going to do, but he really doesn't know. Look at his face. He really doesn't know what he's doing. Look at him. He doesn't know. He's making it up as he goes. Look at that phony mustache and silly. Like, what's the deal with that ring on his hand? So we got that skull on his hand. Like, what's the deal with that? Look at, jeez. He does have nice teeth though. I will say that. And his long hair. He's got long hair. Look at, what a schmuck. Picking his nose. Talking to the camera. Thinks he's smart. He's not really smart. If he was smart, he would remember to turn on the mic input on his camera before filming this, but he didn't, because he's a dumbass, and he forgot. And so he's sitting there, talking with his paintbrush in his hand, trying to look like he really knows what he's talking about, complaining about various topics, such as the mistakes he made in the previous video, where he was trying and be clever and paint the canopy on his tank, and he didn't do it, and he completely messed it up. And then he ends up messing up this video. And so now I have to voice over this video, try and provide some sort of entertainment value, because this guy is a complete schmuck and doesn't know what he's doing. Look at, wasting time just sitting there pondering, like he's intelligent or something. And he continues to point that paintbrush, and I just want to jam that thing right up his nose. Look at, what a guy. Jeez, I just want to just kick the air. Look. Then he puts the paintbrush in his mouth, like he's like, what is this guy's deal? I don't know what his guy's deal is. I think he's a complete schmuck, and I just want to beat him up some days. Look at, oh my god. And so because this schmuck didn't have the mic turned on for his camera, we get to watch some sped up footage of me laying out some liquid mask on this canopy. As you can see here, as I learned my lesson from last time, I didn't bother trying to put on 2 layers. I just very quickly put in just 1 layer. But I'm kind of laying it on a little bit heavy so that hopefully it comes off, you know, in one kind of chunk off the canopy. And so we're just gonna wait for it to dry. Whilst talking that, I'm gonna prime it with some Minotaur primer. Pretty good primer. It goes on really well. Just a couple drops into the AirBrush, and we're going to lay some blackout on the canopy. Of course, after the mask has thoroughly dried. When it dries, it goes pretty clear. And so the priming obviously looks and goes by fairly quickly, as you'd imagine, because it's only a couple drops of paint. It's only a tiny little canopy we're working on. A little bit of Windex, slap it in there. Got my little handy dandy overspray bottle there. Bit of a neat freak when it comes to the AirBrush, but next you see, we're going to grab some antique gold from Minotaur, give it a good shake, a couple drops in the AirBrush, make sure it's flowing well. And surprisingly, for whatever reason, it was flowing well today out of the AirBrush. It was coming out really nice and even, and it was just flowing very well. And so even coverage was pretty fast. Mind you, it's a tiny little canopy piece, and really, you know, how difficult can it be, right? And you see I'm just quickly working through my cleaning process here. Really, half this video is me cleaning this airbrush, which, you know, pretty much anybody's workflow is cleaning your airbrush for like half the amount of time that you're actually going to get any painting done. I could just as easily have done this with my paintbrush and just been very careful and, you know, colored it in and, you know, got whatever done. I was just shooting some air at it to make sure. So next is some fresh blood, and we're going to build that up. Ooh, almost knocked that over. And you can see it's just sometimes for whatever reason with the ghost tints, just because it's so fluidy, it's so fluid-like that, you know, it kind of just flows out of the bottle kind of funny and goops up, and none of the other paints kind of do that. Here I was just kind of illustrating that. I'm just catching the sides of the canopy. If you watched the last video, you know what my process was for painting this thing. Just for anybody who might have missed last week's episode there. Got paint on my fingers and thumbs. Looks like I smashed my thumb or something. Of course, you should always wear gloves. Have your respirator on. I didn't have my respirator on because, well, I thought I was talking to the camera, but apparently this dummy didn't turn it on, so you get to listen to me badly record my voiceover on this. But that's okay because, you know, I kind of feel like kicking my own arse. Let me see here. I'm going to get some gloss varnish next. I was debating whether or not I should gloss varnish it beforehand, before peeling the mask off, and I decided to varnish the part before I peeled the mask off, and that's what we're doing here. I'm quickly just flushing out the brush. You know, like the difference between airbrushing and paintbrushing. You know, it's just such a stark difference, really. Because I mean, like with a paintbrush, especially with small parts like this, really, I think it would have been faster to do it by brush rather than trying to airbrush it, because it is a very minimal color transition on those parts that I probably really didn't need to use the airbrush. Look at this idiot's mouth's moving like he's talking to somebody. Man, I just want to beat the crap out of this guy. You can see here, I initially started cleaning this part and it was coming off really goopy, and I had waited like half an hour almost for the gloss varnish to dry, and it wasn't drying, and you know, it was coming off really goopy, and it was still pretty tacky feeling, and that's why. So I zoom in here and you can see how, like, you know, it's kind of chunky and almost like tearing at the sides, but because, you know, we're cutting the section away before we get into it, it is coming away a lot cleaner. And then, so here I'm just kind of carefully pulling off the parts, and after the varnish is thoroughly dry, it does separate a lot better. And so I continue working from this point forward, pulling off the liquid mask, getting this stuff done, and, you know, grabbed a fresh blade here just because the previous blade had been used quite a bit. And when you're cutting soft materials, you should always switch blades often, because soft material will dull a razor edge faster than a hard object. So when you're working with soft material, styrofoam is the worst. If anybody who's ever worked with styrofoam and razor blades, it's a complete pain. The styrofoam, when it's fresh, when it's a fresh blade, it cuts right through styrofoam nice and easy. And even once it starts to dull just a bit, you'll see, like, you start pulling on chunks and you'll start getting those big tears. That's why, because the blade's not sharp enough anymore, and it doesn't take long to dull that blade. And so I'm just trying to very carefully get that mask off, and it's just being a complete pain. It really wasn't very agreeing with me, and it's actually probably a good thing that the audio doesn't work, because you end up hearing me complain a lot the entire time through this video as I'm, you know, working the blade around the edges, trying to get around, make sure that there's nowhere that the liquid mask is going to pull at the paint job, and I'm trying to use my fingers, my big fat sausage fingers, and trying to get these pieces off, and it's just a complete pain. And I'm using the X-Acto blade, and I'm trying to make sure that I'm, you know, not applying too much pressure, that I'm going to end up scraping the glass, because that's a huge pain as well, because you want that glass to stay nice and, you know, glossy and shiny and, you know, glass-like, right? And so it's just a huge pain. Again, I probably could have done this with just a paintbrush, but I didn't. I don't know why, but it's just the way it goes. There's that one part on the glass. It was just, the liquid mask just was not coming off the way I wanted it to, and you know, the edges look really rough. They don't look nice and smooth. I don't know if it's that maybe I should have allowed more time to dry, but I mean, it was between a couple of these segments here, it was like an hour total drying time. Now things should dry within an hour, especially with acrylic mediums and acrylic paints. Things should dry in an hour. The only time things should take a long time to dry is when you're dealing with oil or solvent, and that's not the case here because these are acrylics, and acrylics dry really fast, typically. So I don't know what the heck is going on. Plus too is the liquid mask is like this silicone kind of rubber material, and I'm not going to pretend to know exactly what it's made of or what it's composed of, but it's a pain. All I know is it's a pain. And from this experience, now the thing is that with that liquid mask, it was sitting in my drawer, which was sitting right above my computer, and it's kind of got this funny, like almost like it boiled at some point or something like that. And so I'm wondering if it changed the composition of my liquid mask, because the first time I used my liquid mask, it worked wonderfully. But since that point, it has kind of been giving me trouble. And I'm thinking maybe my liquid mask, something might have happened to it. So, I don't know. I'm not too sure. But here we can see, you know, the frame of the canopy is painted. From a distance, it looks fine. Up close, it's not quite as good, but it's, you know, it's doable for now. So I'm just being very anal and arranging my workstation here. Getting ready. I'm going to grab a filbert brush from Vallejo. It's a synthetic brush, and we're going to bust out the Tamiya colors now. And we're going to bust out some Tamiya clear green. Like this color. It's lots of fun. And just grab my old junky little palette for dealing with Tamiya colors. As you can see there on the palette, it's got all sorts of colors going on. Grab a little container just for a little bit of isopropyl alcohol. Just a couple millimeters, not even a millimeter of rubbing alcohol. Just give the paint a good shake as I pretty much narrate this entire video, as I just realized, but whatever. Get a little bit on my palette, using the filbert brush because it's got a broad face to it. And when dealing with this Tamiya stuff, you have to really kind of commit to your brush stroke and only do like one brush stroke. And that's what I find with the Tamiya. It's because of the really kind of how fast it evaporates and dries, and, you know, and the alcohol mixed with it, like it's really fast. And so you pretty much have to kind of get the paint down in one brush stroke. That's pretty much all the time you have for is one brush stroke. Commit to it, lay it down, and if need be, you need a second one, then you just lay a second one after that other coat has dried. So you do have some time. It does take a little bit of time, but you know, this is the hobby we all know and love, and really, you really wouldn't have it any other way, right? You would just, this is the way to do it. And you can see here, I'm just kind of working my brush around. Give it a quick rinse. Tamiya will rinse in water, but it doesn't thin with water. That's why we use alcohol with it. And so it's not, like it says water soluble, but it's really, you know, not. And you can see how dirty the brush is there. And so really quickly, I'm just going to use some brush soap, get a little bit clean. You can see there's a little bit of Tamiya green in there. Really quickly, I'm just rinsing my brush off, cleaning it, working with a nice lather. You can already see there the hairs are getting nice and clear. It must have been a while since I've cleaned this brush. I kind of neglect my synthetic haired brushes. You can see there, it's got the nice rich color again in the hairs. Again, it's synthetic. When dealing with the Tamiya colors and, you know, the liquid mask and anything other, like where I really don't want to hurt my sable hairs, I use synthetic. Synthetics get the job of, you know, expendability, as it were. And, you know, we pay enough for a lot of our good synthetic brushes, and, you know, rightly so. We'll use the synthetic because synthetics are cheaper. You know, I'm not saying that they're any worse. I'm just saying expendable. You see there? I'm just kind of inspecting the thing, and I'm not too happy with how the green laid out, so I'm just really quickly grabbing some over-thinned paint. I had laid a little bit too much rubbing alcohol into the palette, and so I'm just really quickly layering a little bit more in, trying to shore up that color, make it nice and smooth and solid. And so there, I'm fairly happy with how it looks, so we're going to leave it there. And I'm looking at my brush again and say, oh crap, I gotta wash it again. So I'll wash it again, because I thought it was done last time, but it wasn't. And that's it. And so that's pretty much it. You leave it to dry, clean the brush off, put the soap away, and because this schmuck forgot to turn the mic on for the camera, you have to listen to me overdub this, but there we go.